It has been a couple of hours since I finished Umineko, and I still don't know exactly what to say. It's now much later in that day since I finished Umineko, as I rolled credits early in the morning, and I still don't quite know what to say. Both of those were actually a week ago at this point, and I've tried writing things out for more than a week now, and I still haven't gotten very far in. It's all because of how unique the work Umineko is. So I thought instead of continuing writing things down in sort of an orderly fashion, I thought instead I would just speak them out instead of writing things. My plan is I want to tackle them all individually because I feel like there's so much to say about each episode on their own, and I suppose you may already know that because the title of this is going to be named after episode one. So, yeah, but there is, I guess just be following how I was writing things out before just completely going off script like I am now, just speaking. But I before even talking about Umineko, there's one very important thing about it, and it's the way it's titled. It's Umineko no Naku, Umineko no Naku Koro ni, and it has a little subtitle that says "When They Cry 3." And I don't know if it's just how things have been perceived online now, but most people often ignore that bit and just skip straight to Umineko, ignoring Higurashi, which is quite the opposite of what I did. I read Higurashi with no intent of reading Umineko. I just thought Higurashi was this cool little story I saw on Steam, and I want to talk about that a little bit first. It was the August of 2019. I was on Steam and I saw this game with this orange haired girl was sitting on the cover, and I thought, oh, this looks pretty cool. It has like the horror tag. I've been looking for some horror. I haven't really seen many horror VNs, and there really aren't too many strictly horror VNs. I feel that try to genuinely like spook the player. I feel like it often goes into more like Guro and stuff like that. But anyways, I bought the excuse me, I bought the first episode, Onikakushi, and I absolutely loved it. It's Hinamizawa is a very realized setting, and the characters, the cast, it's so fun to read all their antics, and of course when the Watanagashi happens and everything shifts into the horror and the mystery and all the dread, it's perfection. I can still remember how like the setting of my room when I read it, because it was there were cicadas outside my house, and they were chirping, or whatever it is that cicadas do. I suppose cry would be the appropriate term to use, but I still remember them ringing out, them chirping, and I remember how hot and humid it was in my room. I think it was also during the summer, so it was very fitting for the setting of Higurashi. But even though I pretty much devoured Higurashi's first episode very quickly. It took me until 2021, if I remember correctly, to actually finish it, and that was because Matsuri hadn't come out at that point, and I thought to myself, okay, I don't want to read answer arcs if they're not all out yet, because it would stink if I really wanted to read the ending. And I got to that point, I was like, well, damn, I have to wait now. So I just read all of QA, and I absolutely loved it, but unfortunately, I forgot about it until Matsuri released, and then a year after, I actually got to it after a friend put me on it. She really likes it, and she was like, you should actually finish Higurashi. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. I had a lot of fun with it, but I approached it a lot differently that time, and I got really into the mystery aspect of it. I It felt like I'll be using this metaphor a lot, but I felt like a game between me and Ryukishi on sort of figuring out what was going on in Hinamizawa. So I did a lot of theorizing. This was a couple years, over 3 years back. It should be 2021, but I did a lot of theorizing. I remember I made a chart of like all the character relations. I'll probably show that on screen or whatever. I made a chart of that. It was, oh man, it was so fun. I basically wrote out like a, I don't want to say thesis because it wasn't that like robust, but I wrote like a base, just a summarization of like all my theories on whatever was going on. It was a blast, but ultimately I feel like Higurashi isn't, it still doesn't lean fully into that mystery. I feel like it it wants to tell a different story. I can't, and I shouldn't go too much into that because this isn't about Higurashi. This is about Umineko, but that's what that's what I felt immediately going into Umineko, that this is very much about the mystery, the relationship between the player, the reader, you, and Beatrice and Ryukishi to some extent. It's almost like as Battler and Beatrice are playing a game with each other, Ryukishi and the reader are. But it was a very nice. It's a very nice introduction. I suppose I should talk about the first impressions I had with episode one, and I just like every single time someone says, or it's like the opinion that some VNs start really slow. It takes so long to get to the good parts. I stopped believing people saying that after Steins Gate. The ending is not the ending. The start isn't that slow. It's very well paced. It's a slow build up, but all the pieces are there, and it all explodes at the perfect moment. It's just, I shouldn't be talking about Steins Gate, but it's a masterful build up to that. I think episode 11 or 12 or maybe 13. I don't know. It's been a while since I watched Steins Gate, but the introduction to Rakenjima is, it's, I shouldn't be going too far ahead. I shouldn't be thinking about the scene with Maria and the flower, but that is the first thing that's coming to my mind. But I'll start at the airport. It's the Ushiromiyas, besides of course the people on the island and plus Kinzo and all that. They're in the airports. They're a very interesting family. The first time you're introduced to them, they're very loving, but as anybody who's read episode one in its entirety, you know, the second all the kids are gone, they get in the dining hall, and the first thing is, oh, it's the inheritance. How are we gonna split the money? And there's so much bullshit going on there. These poor bastards just keep arguing and arguing and arguing. But it's such an interesting contrast that immediately like hooked me into to the struggles of each of these individual siblings and their families, because you see this sort of like loving connection between all of them before they make it onto the island, and all of a sudden it's like how when someone gets infected with Hinamizawa syndrome, and like they immediately start going insane. It's like, why are you acting like that? Like, what the fuck, Reina? I thought we were chill. I thought we were besties. But there's no syndrome going on here. This is just what happens when money is involved with these people, and it's such a good way of engaging yourself to the plot before even any of the mystery stuff happens. Even before, well, around the same time, Beatrice is introduced, but we'll get to her later. Ooh. It's so weird talking off script, because it's like I can just say whatever I want. I guess. I guess I'll go to the scene, the very first scene, not even the airport, but with Kinzo and his Bayo Torisu, which is, it's funny. I'm emulating or trying to emulate the voice acting, but I read in original sprites, original voices, not because I've seen clips of the voice acting. It's incredible. I like going back on the scenes I read and like reading them that way, because it's really phenomenal work. But I don't know, it's just always been like sort of a thing with me where I think like Ryukishi's VNs are, as they are advertised, they're sound novels. the most prominent noise you hear are the sound effects and the music and all that. And I feel like that's how I get very much immersed into his works. But anyways, the way Kinzo acts in that scene, it's I don't think Umineko could have started any other way. It's about this old ass man crying out for this woman named Beatrice, and we have no idea who they are, why he cares so much, why he's calling out her name. But you see this man, and you see this man who's presumably like some rich almost old asshole, and he's just basically on his knees pleading for some woman. And you, before anything else, I went into Umineko almost fully blind, and I'm just thinking, what the hell happened to this guy? Who is this lady that could push this old man to start screaming and crying over her? But it hooks you in immediately. There's so many things about the first episode of Umineko that just immediately hooks you. And it's the same thing with Higurashi's first episode, and that's why I love both of their first episodes, is because it immediately hooks you in. Higurashi's first episode makes you ask so many questions. It introduces you to all these constants that'll loop throughout the rest of the series, like the Waranagashi festival and all of that. And it's very, it's so Ryukishi. You know how to do opening arcs, but anyway, so I suppose, I guess it'd be fun to go through all the Ushiромiyas, at least from a base level before, because they each all have like their moments across the narrative, of course, because as we know, 6 of them have to die by the first Twilight, so not everybody can get their moment to shine. But I guess the kids are a good place to start. Battler he's like Keiichi if he was even more of a moron, but he manages to have such an endearing personality that you just can't hate him. He's, especially not even considering later on in the story, just as he is, you can tell he does things out of the goodness of his heart. And even though he's quite adult, you still can't help but like almost laugh alongside with him. He's a very likable protagonist, which is usually what you want. Maria, I guess I'll talk about Maria. She's her, I guess I'll get ahead of myself here, but because it's not really apparent by episode 1, but she's almost one half of the whole that is Umineko. She embodies so many of its themes, so much of what it's trying to say, and from that first introduction, you think, oh, she's just like a sort of adorable kid character, but the way she hides things, the way she sort of keeps things in a wrap, it's a very personal thing, and I very much appreciate how Ryukishi does her character. But I'll talk about her more a little later with the flower scene. George. George is such a poor guy. He gets all the incel and Sigma memes attached to him, but he's just it's a poor little dude. He doesn't know what he wants to be until later on in the story. Of course, he gathers that resolve, but he's a very reliable person. You can tell just by the way he acts around children, as they comment on all the time, and how he's almost always a mediator. Whenever he's with the kids and the adults, he's like that middle ground. Like whenever the adults are arguing, and Battler is like, "Oh, those piece of shit adults." He's like, "Okay, you try to be understanding, Battler. There's like they have a really tough time here out on the island. They got to figure out all these difficult things. It's best to leave them alone." And then with him, the kids, and Maria, he's always like, if something ever happens between the two, because Battler's always making fun of, or not making fun of, but like saying to Maria, you you probably shouldn't be laughing that people just started dying. It's kind of freaky. He's still always there to help out. Uh, I guess I can do Jessica now, even though she's not in the airport scene. Jessica's pretty cool. I There's not much for me to say about her introduction. She's just kind of like she gets more stuff in episode 2, so I guess I'll leave her off for now. Rosa, you can. This is going a little bit of ahead, the airport scene, but you can tell from the get go that she sort of has trouble talking amongst the other siblings, and I think that's a very. I mean, I myself can't relate because I'm by no means the youngest, but I can understand not being able to talk because you're like the youngest around these people, and you sort of just have always been pushed around and whatnot. But Rosa is another who doesn't get too much this this episode because she dies in the first Twilight, from what I remember. I was not the actually I'll get into all the mystery solving stuff later, but I was not the Twilight's person to say the least. But anyways, Rosa, she's also you can I don't know if I'd say you can tell she's putting on a facade because I don't know if she herself knows she's putting on a facade. But more on her later. We have I guess we'll go with Kirei and Rudolph. They're such a fun bunch. I can't even like they're just there's I wish I could talk shit out with Kira. I'm sure she'd have some wonderful things to say on just the most random things. She's the way she's able to manipulate conversations, the way her thinking is so many times like a crucial pillar for battlers' struggles against the Lich. But the way her and Rudolph act and have sort of this like you can tell even without much being revealed about what happened between Battler and Rudolph with Rudolph getting with Kira. You can tell there's this sort of weird like almost barrier between the two and Kira, and it's illustrated in a very subtle way, and you can sort of like feel it from the beginning, but there's still like you can tell there's a very like big connection between all three of them. But it's again more on that later. This is just base introductions. Hideyoshi and Ava, which are it's still absolutely hilarious to me that you have Hideyoshi, who's like the calmest, most show guy. He's like the only adult I could say isn't like a complete like revealed to be a complete asshat. He's just a good guy. He's trying to do the nicest thing, and it's a real ass mentality to have. I appreciate it. Ava, on the other hand, the best way I can describe her is she's a snake, and I absolutely adore that. She's my favorite adult. I'll be talking about her a lot whenever she's prevalent, which is a lot of the times because of circumstances that show up later. But she's oh, there's never a dull moment with her around. That should be everyone in the airport scene. So I guess I'll go to people on the island. If I'm remembering correctly, Goda is the first one they meet. Or is it Goda? No, they meet Jessica before the island. I already talked about Jessica. Or is it after? Anyways, I know they meet Jessica first, and then Goda, I think, is. Yeah, I'm just gonna go with Goda. Goda. Oh, Goda. I hate that guy. He's almost like comic relief in a way. I don't think he's ever had many. I don't think he ever had serious scenes, and I don't think he's meant to. But man, is he a funny guy, especially with how I don't know if it's just the way me and a friend interpreted it. More on that later, but he always seemed to be in a prime spot to be the culprit, and I just thought that was hilarious because of how unassuming and how much like it's like you're always thinking, oh, okay, so Goda could have done it. Canon could have done it. Oh yeah, I hope everyone has fun with my pronunciation of some of the names because of not having voice acting. Like I pronounce it like I pronounce Canon like Canon and D. Shannon is just gonna be like normal Shannon. I pronounce Kire like Kyrie earlier, like Kyrie Irving, because that's just again the only way. When I see that name, I think of Kyrie Irving instead of Kire, even though I should think of the Japanese way of saying it. But anyways, I'm not gonna change it for Canon and Shannon just because I'm so used to it and it just makes sense to me. But anyways, I think I forgot what I was talking about. Anyways, Goda, he's a very funny guy. I believe the next person is Canon. Yes, it is, and there's there's something about canon immediately that you can tell is different. It is different compared tonally to the rest of the story. It's like I want to say it's because of the music, which I guess I'll talk about later and just like go through tracks I like a lot and that really makes scenes. But even that statement, that cutoff statement, even I is has stuck around with me, not just because I've read episode one as well as all of QA twice, like thoroughly, and then like skimming it like three or four more times just to theorize more. But that scene has always stuck out to me, and it's almost like Umineko is revealed like a piece of its heart before you even quite understand what it's supposed to mean. And I think, man, oh man, that's we'll get to that, all that stuff, in a way later episode when it's actually relevant. But it's a very effective way of leaving sort of impact on you, telling you you should remember this. It's something important. But I guess we have Kumasawa. I missed her. She was supposed to be earlier too. She's she's just a nice old granny. She has more stuff later on, but that's pretty much the main impression you get from her. And then I suppose I missed Genji and Nanjo, since from what I remember, Genji and Nanjo are in the very first scene with Kinzo as well. Uh, Also, they're just homies basically. Genji has a lot of stuff later on, but right now he's just sort of like the main butler dude who's always obeying the one winged eagle and the Ushiromiyas to a T. And then Nanjo is this sort of almost he almost feels like it almost feels like he's, I don't know how to phrase it. He feels very odd. He feels very out of place because it's almost like he just happened to be there. It's like on accident. He shouldn't really, because it's hard to ever suspect him. And I guess what makes him suspicious is because he's friends with Kinzo. But it's almost like he accidentally was there. And from what I recall, he was called there to be with Kinzo, but as we learned in episode 4, Kinzo's already dead, so it was probably Sayo or Kraus and Natsuhi calling Nacho there. So it's a bit funny that he ended up getting stuck in these looping days on Rokenjima, but more on that later. Kraus and Natsuhi, I think, are next. You can tell from the get go that they have very stressful lives. Natsuhi with her infinite headaches, which we also learn where they're from later on, but you can tell Natsuhi's such a hard ass. She's always on Jessica's ass. She's always on everyone's ass. It gets a bit annoying. I can't lie, but she she has her reasons. She has her pride, and of course Kraus also has that very same pride, and he's not afraid to let it show. That's why he bickers with the siblings so much, and why they have so much conflict. Why it's one against three rather than two against two. Maybe teaming up with another sibling because he has that pride as the current want to succeed Kinzo, who you also know is dead. So I guess Kinzo would be the last person to mention, and he is a fascinating character, of course, when mainly because of his backstory and finally learning the connection he has with Beatrice and whatnot. But I think from the very beginning, he's already this sort of elusive figure, and I've started to like to joke around that Kinzo's presence on Rokenjima, he managed to will himself into existence for the first 4 episodes because of how much presence he has on the island, despite not being seen. It's actually incredible how well done it is. Like you can tell, and Ryukishi does this mostly through the reactions, where like you see all the siblings bickering and that they're acting really slimy and snaky around each other, and then the moment Kinzo is mentioned, all of a sudden they start like sweating and they're like, oh shit, Kinzo said something, and like all the one-winged eagle servants follow him to like a T, and it's quite incredible, really. And I think alongside Kinzo, with that sort of presence that has such a lasting impact on everything, is Beatrice. One of my absolute favorite things about episode 1 is the fact that Beatrice doesn't appear once, besides at the very end, which is another genius thing I'll mention later. But the fact that she doesn't show up once, and yet it feels like she's always lurking in the shadows, like she's almost ready to jump at a moment's notice. It's quite incredible. The atmosphere of episode 1 taking on like a classic murder mystery. Ryukishi, I can't do anything but applaud. It's incredible. But the way Beatrice is, like, what we learn later on, she's a combination of the previous island's mythos. She's a combination of stories told by the servants, and of course she's a combination of Kinzo's interaction with the Golden Witch Beatrice from Italy. Beatrice in general is a combination of so many things, which will also be talked about later on, of course. But it's fascinating how much presence she has in that massive painting in the room. I believe it's in the entrance hall of the Rokenjima mansion. And the is it 3 or 4 letters? I want to say it's 4, because there's the 3 main letters. Or is it 5 letters? This doesn't really matter. Anyways, she sends quite a bit of letters in the first episode. But the fact is, there's so much. It's kind of feels kind of silly to use this word, but there's so much aura emanating from those letters that it almost, in a way, how she appears technically in Umineko, the Umineko magic scene. It's almost like she's willed into existence by everyone because they all believe in her existence, and it's very, very wonderfully done. So I think that's it for character introductions. I think that's everyone. I think I've talked about everyone, introduced them. This is probably why the first rambling is going to be the longest, just because there's so much to introduce, so much to talk about. But anyways, I feel like there's looming in the background whenever I want to speak about this game, and I ran into it many times while attempting to write, is the soundtrack. The Umi soundtrack is everywhere. Everybody talks about it when talking about how great Umineko is, and I am pleased to report that there's reason for that, and I feel there's no better way for me to personally speak about it than to just go through the soundtrack and talk about the events as they happen. Of course, I don't want to just summarize events, but I feel like, because no one likes that in a and I don't want to say this is an analysis. This is just sort of ramblings, but nobody wants to just hear the story summarized towards them because they've already read it. But I just want to talk about things in general, and I've always felt that the best way for me to do that is through the soundtrack, and just it eliciting emotion in myself, and me trying to bring that emotion out vocally. So I suppose Rose would be. I'll just go in order of the soundtrack and just just kind of see what happens, because that's just how things are done. I know exactly what comes to mind when Rose plays, but that opening scene, of course. But it's, I hope the audio mixing is fine, because otherwise I'm cooked. But it's almost, it's serene. It's serene and somber. It's full of like these strings playing. I want to say legato, and it's just very dragged out, and it's just swelling, and it's very almost flowy, and it it almost feels like, just like with Kinzo in the first scene, it's almost like it's yearning for something. It wants to reach this sort of conclusion, and I feel like this piece plays many times throughout Umineko, and it's a very appropriate one to show up that often, because it's that yearning. It's, we have Kinzo and Beatrice, and then there's, of course, in turn, Battler and Beatrice as well. They have a similar thing going on, but more on that way later down the line. But it's, Rose is a very wonderful tone setter. I think the next one is the opening song, and I'm gonna not play the whole thing, but there's, right, I guess just the normal version now. The main thing I just want to highlight is first of all, the song is just, I still think this is the best. I want to say this is my favorite When They Cry opening. It's I'm about to sneeze, hold on. It's, that flute is godlike, but I don't think I'm gonna say anything like music theory wise. I don't think I can say anything of value, but it's just, it's such a fitting song for the tone of Umineko. It's like, you have the beginning Italian, which I'll get to later, but it feels like this verse in Japanese. It's like, it feels like they're, I don't know why, but I get the vibes of like almost Scooby-Doo. Like, I can see the characters sneaking around in the mansion. It's like they're kind of prancing around, and that sort of fits the visuals in the background. I don't know, but it's just kind of a chill, and then the opening, it snaps, and it starts accelerating, and you feel this strain, this conflict of emotions between everyone inside of Rokkenshima, and it's just, this opening is so good. I'll let the rest play out, and then I'll get back to the beginning. And then the Italian comes back, but that Italian, I think, is the interesting part about it in the beginning, in particular, because it's because usually if you're an English speaker reading or watching something Japanese, and it's like you finally read the opening, it's like, oh my god, it's like, it's been foreshadowing so much, and it's like, wow, I had no idea everything was like so blunt. Like, I suppose the first thing that comes to mind is Clanad After Story, and reading the opening lyrics to that is, it's rough, but it's like, it's not really hidden, because those watching in Japanese who are Japanese and know Japanese are like, they hear the lyrics. But the thing with the Umi opening is that it starts in Italian, and it kind of makes it clear that it's not meant to be like understood by really anybody, unless they have that very specific subset of knowledge, which, okay, knowing a language very specific is a bit odd, but obviously the target audience is most likely Japanese people, because it's written in Japanese. That's just kind of how it works. But and not every Japanese person is just going to know Italian, and in fact most of them probably won't. But the lyrics, the what they're saying, no rules, no commandment, no reason, in other words, unforeseeable, but it happens, evil things happen, and I'm the cause of them. You still don't get it. Now, it's such a wonderful way of outlining the mindset of Beatrice and her game, and how really how it works, and what its intent is, and who it's for, and all that in just like a couple of lines. That it's for something. It's for somebody to understand. Beatrice is the cause of the things. There's no rule, no reason. Nothing is to make sense, and that is her game. It's not meant to make sense. It's supposed to appear as magic, because if something doesn't make sense and someone doesn't try to, you know, pursue reason, it becomes magic. The witch did it, and it's just it's such a lovely way of. Such a lovely way of. Oh, excuse me. It's such a lovely way of. I said that 3 times now. It's a great way of almost telling you what you're in for, even if you don't understand. And just the vocalist did a wonderful job. I really this opening is great. But anyways. We've kind of. I'll probably skim over some of these later ones, or some of these earlier ones. Excuse me, I'm all over the place. Some of these earlier ones, because I already talked about like where Doorway of Summer plays. It's during the plane scene, the airport scene, and it's just a very nice, peaceful track. I believe this is the one that has a different version. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Hane Feather is the sped up version of this. But it's just a nice little peaceful track. I don't have too much to say. Yeah, very, very, very nice track. It's another one where it's sort of just a simple, nice, happy tune. It really shows. I want to say it shows at least this track. It shows like the playful nature and the connection between these cousins who haven't all been together since 6 years ago when Battler left. Right on. This is the song that plays in the showing off the cast. I don't really have much to say either for this one. Very grand. Just gives you a sense that this ain't gonna be the first time you're going to Rokkenjima. You're gonna be here for a long while. So yeah. Towering Cloud in Summer. This is another similar one to Dore of Summer and Hane. See, I don't remember hearing this one too much, but I do remember it. It's again. We'll start getting into Hope is almost there. See is a very nice track though. This is okay. This is like I think this is the first one I want to stick a little bit on. Hour of Darkness. It's from what I remember, this plays when Maria starts mentioning that the shrine or what the mirror, from what I remember, has been broken, and she feels like it's just going to start storming, and it's the first time she's really done anything like that. Sort of appeared like almost dark and ominous, which we see a lot of her later on, but it's especially going into this not knowing too much. It's like I don't know exactly what you're getting at here with this for you, Kishina, but the way it's all recontextualized what the shrine breaking means and whatnot, it's very well done. Hour of Darkness is also used a lot of other places. It's a very good song after something bad happens and you're like, you gotta like sort of assess, and it's like, oh, maybe we should be worried about things, but anyways, Novelette. I absolutely adore this track. I don't want to say I'm a classical nut, but I quite enjoy classical music. I did play it for a little bit, and it's excuse me, it's Presence. I was talking about Presence earlier, and one of my I've done a little reading in the genre of manor literature, British in particular, which sort of fits here because it's a Western like style mansion, but oftentimes the manor itself, the mansion becomes a character of its own, and I feel like probably the biggest thing that does that here that normal novels don't have is the soundtrack with Novelette. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but the sort of like it's like something you'd hear at like a very posh, like sort of high establishment place, and this is just playing at these random people's homes, and it really sets the stage for like the grandeur of just how wealthy these people are, how rich they are, and how high class, and I don't want to say noble because they're kind of past that period of time, but they are like remnants of a noble family, and it's very well heard here, and I really like that. I don't remember if this has the breathe thing. I think that's another classical piece, which I love it when pieces you can hear the performers breathe. I adore chamber music. I don't want to. Oh wait, no, the breathing's gonna come here. Watch. You hear that? It adds so much life. I adore that stuff. Anyways, okay, a big one up and coming. good old Hope. So, I guess I should start by saying Dai is an absolute legend. That man knows how to compose some music. After Higurashi soundtrack was forever changed when that man was dropped in to play or to compose for episode 5, I believe. I don't remember when he. I think it was episode 5 he came on in Higurashi. I can't quite remember, but I want to say it was episode 5, and I think the story was that like he was like saying, "Oh, the music isn't. What is this music, Ryukishi? What is this royalty-free music in Higurashi? Like, I really like the story, but this music's trash." And I think it was like Ryukishi said, "Then you do better. You make something better." And then he did. I don't know if that's just some like made up story or not, but either way, he's a very, very wonderful composer. And Hope, I don't know if I'd say it's the heart of the soundtrack like a lot of people do. I think that goes to either Thanks for Being Born. I'm not even going to say either. I think Thanks for Being Born is probably the heart of the soundtrack for me right now as I'm speaking, but who knows, it could change. But I can't think of any other scene with this song playing other than the first one with Maria and her flower. The wilting flower in a field of others growing around her, and it's something that's it's stuck with me ever since I saw it and read it. I want to say, has it been 2 years or has it been 3 years? Either way, it's just always stuck with me. Her pure intentions, just to remember it and keep it safe. I'd like to think it has more metaphorical meaning, but of course that would be later on. And I really do think that Hope is a very, very fitting name for this song. It's just so good. Let me go back and just talk through some things just as I'm feeling. The sort of like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like the wispy nature of the beginning. It feels like a dream. It feels Hope is dream. And the lone piano. It's the lone piano with its harmony played by the left hand. It's so I think sincere is the best way to put this track, and I think sincere is I think that sincerity is why a lot of people call call this the heart of the Umineko soundtrack, because sincerity is Umineko. It's such a sincere work, such a personal work, and the song encapsulates all of that. It's damn. Anyways. White Shadow. This White Shadow. Okay, so this is such a this just sounds like an internal thought with the synth and the sort of, I don't know what instrument that is, but like this sort of like, oh, I want to say it's like, I can never remember the difference between like a marimba, a xylophone, and I forgot the rest. But it sounds like someone playing one of those instruments. It should be like the small metallic one. But anyways, it's a very introspective tune, and it plays a lot of times when characters are thinking to themselves, and that internal monologue is something that's just internal thought is such a prominent piece in Umineko's storytelling, and we first get a scene with that with Canon in episode 1, and I already mentioned it prior, but the even I also stuck with me greatly afterwards, and I also said earlier, it's like Umi revealing part of its heart before like you even understanding what it's supposed to mean, and it's such a very powerful thing. I really enjoy this piece. Oh, steady pace. This is. Now I say Natsuhi in the thumbnail, and I will admit it does remind me quite a lot of her. This is another one of the phenomenal pieces that set the tone of the mansion, and how high up and rich these people are, but at the same time there's this tinge of like melancholy and loneliness in steady pace, which is probably why it's attributed to Natsuhi in the thumbnail here. But you lose so many opportunities when you're forced to resign yourself to a certain position, and that's, I don't want to say it's completely, no, it's most definitely like addressed in the story, but I feel like not many people really talk about it, just how constrained, like, because no one, let's be honest, no one really wants to sympathize with someone who's filthy rich and who can buy anything they want and live so very comfortably, but it is such a restraining thing to completely resign yourself to a certain position and just force yourself to not even be who you want to be. And I think not being afforded to be who you want to is another big sort of theme present in a lot of Umineko. We see it, of course, mainly in Maria and her struggles to be herself, to be sort of noticed by the adults and loved by her mother and noticed by her. But this is it's another, it's basically in the same realm as Novelette, but with a melancholy tinge, and I really enjoy that. Moonlit Night is same territory as Novelette and steady pace, but this one I'd like to say is a lot more like, I think I would describe it as like a budding romance. It's very slow. It has these pauses, and then it'll swell. It'll go forte, and then a decrescendo into piano. It swells a lot, and I really do feel like it's a very apt way of like portraying two people getting closer and closer to one another before they finally meet. Very pretty piece. Sukashi Yuri. Ah, okay. This is... Oh my god. What is the piece? Oh my god, why can't I remember it? I want to say it's 2001 Space Odyssey. I don't know why I'm forgetting, but it's... Yeah, bom, 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 bom. I'm not saying that right, but... This is similar in the beginning, at least, to that, I feel. And it's it all I feel like it's often been used to. It's often used with Beatrice in mind, from what I remember, and it's almost like a presentation of things, a presentation of who she is, and like an introduction to her world and her side of the mansion. It's a very lovely piece. I'm a big fan. Oh, I'm just now. I forgot how much music is in episode. Yeah, this definitely is going to be the longest ramble because there's so much of episode one to go through, and I still haven't even gotten to like the main part of it really because episode one is mainly just introductions. There's not much to really like analyze per se because this is our introduction to Rokenjima, the characters, the mystery, all of that. So, anywho, at death's door. Oh, this is one of the spooky ones. I don't like the way Ava's looking at me in this thumbnail. But is this the one that goes? I think it is. Yeah, where it sort of like pops off. But this, I think this is one of the songs. I think the mansion, just like it has two sides of it, two leaders, two hosts. I don't know if that's the best way I'd put it, but you get the gist. Or Kinzo, master is the term. Kinzo you have as the master of day, and then you have Beatrice as the master of night. And I think there are tracks that there are two tracks, like genre of tracks that are like mainly there to set the atmosphere of the mansion, and they're the ones that are like Novelette and Steady Pace, Moonlit Night that are like setting sort of the day atmosphere, even though Moonlit Night is at night, but it sets like sort of this happy regal vibe towards Rokenjima. But then you start getting into at Death's Door and then Quarter Purgatory Sands afterwards. But it the atmosphere is so well done, so well made by these later songs to really prepare you for what's to come with the murder side of things. And just I want to go back a little bit for like the bass. Ooh, the bass, the long sustained note. It's so menacing, and the ringing, boom, boom, so well done. And then it's just slowly like sort of like it feels like it's in like I feel like the mansion is consuming me. It's like slowly wrapping itself around me, and it's like as they find themselves in the same position, it feels like I'm being trapped inside Rokenjima, and inside the mansion, and I can no longer escape. It's got its grubby paws on me. Anyways, Corridor of Purgatory Sands. I think this is almost like a sequel to At Death's Door. It's like At Death's Door is like the premonition. It's like okay, things are getting a little freaky, and then Corridor of Purgatory Sands is it's starting to get like sort of flustered. It's like if At Death's Door is at well, let's use a door metaphor. At Death's Door is like you can hear breathing coming from the other side of the door. Corridor of Purgatory Sands is like if the person behind that door opened it and like started like looking through it. It's like this sort of like fearsome progression, and I very much enjoy it. Fortitude. Okay. I want to say this is probably the first sort of like sad, somber pieces. And it finds its place a lot in Umi because there's quite a bit of sad and tragic scenes, but if I'm remembering correctly, the first scene this plays in, the first scene this plays in is with Maria and Rosa when Rosa starts to berate and hit Maria, and it feels as though that's the first time that things really clicked with me, that there's like I knew the family had struggles between each other, like the Ava's family particularly the adults, they struggle with the other siblings. But this is the first time I really felt that there's strain between people inside, like each sibling's family as well. You know, Maria and Rosa, we'll be speaking a lot more about them. Well, I don't know why I say we. I will be speaking a lot more about them later. And their strained relationship with each other, their struggle to understand one another and express the feelings that they hold inside themselves. There's Jessica and mainly Natsuhi. Kraus kind of doesn't really interfere too much with Jessica's affair. He's kind of just mean to Natsuhi. But Natsuhi and Jessica, I'm starting to realize most of the struggles between inside of the families are between the mothers and either the son or the daughter. Besides Rudolph and Battler, but even then, it's more of a Kirei thing, I think. But anyway, so I went over Maria and Rosa. But then there's it's already gonna loop. But I guess George would be next. George, as we learn later on with Ava, mainly Ava, Hideyoshi to a lesser extent. He's just kind of a nice guy. He's one of the only nice adults, like, with not too many, like, he poor Hideyoshi. Anyways, Ava, of course, has these expectations with George, where she truly does, like, I do not believe anyone who says Ava doesn't truly love George. It's just that she can't let go of the feelings she has with wanting to become head, with desiring that power after being, like, just verbally abused and put down because of who she was and what gender she was born. But more on that definitely in episode 3, because that doesn't really get made apparent until later on. But George has that sort of strain on their relationship because George, of course, he's fine with being head, but he would throw all that away to be with Shannon. So that's the strain they have internally between their family. Then there's, of course, I'll say Battler for last. There's Jessica and Natsuhi. Jessica's a very free spirit. She wants to be her own person. And Natsuhi's this hard ass who's like, okay, you're gonna study for school, you're gonna act like a proper successor to the headship, all that. And Jessica's just having none of it. Theirs is a lot more like, I want to say there's a lot more relaxed. I feel like Natsuhi isn't, like, she's a hard ass, but she's too afraid to act on it. So it's not really as focused on Umi, but it is there. And then, of course, Battler gets the double trouble with Rudolph and Kirei. Kirei's is very one-sided. That's a fascinating thing about her character. Like, I don't know if I'd say she hates Battler, like, fully, but she has, of course, this disdain because she's not her biological, she's not his biological mother, and it's almost like it's like living embodiment of this relationship your husband had with another, and that it weighs down on you, and that's explored also later. So I'll talk about that another time in another episode. I feel like I'm gonna be saying that a lot, which is annoying, but that's just how it is if you're doing it things episode by episode with Rudolph and Battler. There's also isn't made too apparent now, but I mean, you're told the strain of their relationship in the form of, hold on, Witch and Gold and Maria with a funny smile, but Rudolph and Battler's strain on their relationship is shown through the fact that he left for 6 years. He threw away his family name, because he held this much hatred for his father moving on to another woman after his mother passed. But that's mostly resolved at that point in the story, for the most part, because he's here now, It's 6 years have passed, he's decided to come back to Rokkenjima. Anyways, Witch and Gold. There we go. This one is mostly. This is, I remember this clearly as, of course, our first introduction to Beatrice. I think this plays during when the letter is shown, and what a very fitting place to have this piece put, and the way I want to. Oh my god! Is it a harpsichord? Or is it? I think I'm probably wrong. If I'm wrong, oops. If I'm not, wonderful. But it it's a very fitting instrument for this sort of like high class witch who's in this position, vastly elevated to everyone else, and this song is very good at capturing that feeling. And it's almost like the fact that it's like sort of this calm but like yet regal and like high class just shows how they're almost treating this as a game. How Beatrice is treating this as sort of like a formal invitation, which is what it is. Because from what I remember, she's inviting them to solve the epitaph to solve and stop the murders. So very 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 neat piece. I really like the slow realization from Battler and the meta aspect that she very much treats this like a game in general, and it's very similar to that, of course, in universe. But there's a lot more motivation wise, which will be talked about way later on. But Lure. Okay, this one's another. This is in the same realm as like At Death's Door, Quarter, Purgatory Sands, where things are starting to get a little odd. So I don't think there's too much to say. I really like how the piano echoes and whatnot. I think it's very well done. And the strings that come in, and the more of the bells, which it's a reoccurring instrument. I really like it. Its use in Golden Slaughter is really really cool. That should be coming up soon. But ooh, uh, I don't know if I'm just like a silly person. I don't know if I'm just doing this like as a joke or whatnot, but Fishy Aroma is unironically one of my favorite tracks in Umineko. This song is it's a fucking bop. It's a fucking bop. Like I don't know if everyone's seen that one GIF of fucking of Lambda Burn and Beatrice like moving their heads around with it. That's what I imagine whenever I hear this song. It's and the percussion, I don't know if it's a bongo or not. And the strings plucking. Oh, it's just such a, it's so playful, and it's so very fitting of the witch, because it's all just a game to her. At least in terms of how she presents it, she's presenting this as a game. That's how Maria also treats it as. It's just, yeah, these aren't murders. It's just Beatrice's resurrection. Everyone's gonna come back later, but oh, this song is so. I think I have a confession to make about. I remember being so annoyed with Beatrice when I first read Question Arcs. I read it twice. I'll talk about that more later on. But the first time I read it, I remember being so annoyed with Beatrice. She was I thought she was a brat, just a spoiled brat who doesn't understand life at all, and she should just be quiet and learn things. But on my reread, I felt enjoyment a lot of what she does and how she acts, and I think Battler's the same way in Answer Arcs, and even early on or later on in Question Arcs. And this song, I think, is one of the main reasons I came around to liking her a lot, loving Beatrice a lot. This this fucking song. You have no idea how happy I was when this had a vocal version in episode 6, I think. Yeah, episode 6. That's when Feather and Burn are like all like acting all mysterious and like icky because they're creating the game board for the answers for Beatrice. But anyway, stupefaction. Ooh, this is another song. Same realm at death's door. Quarter of purgatory sands. It gives the mansion such a constraining vibe. It's so claustrophobic. I love it. The buzzing and the piano. Oh, it's so good. And it's like it's droning on you. It's like locking you into place. When this starts playing, everyone's fucked. It's over at this point. This song is wonderful though. It's I think the mystery and the horror is definitely at its highest in episode one, and I think a lot of that is to do with the soundtrack because it immediately pulls you and it immediately grips you, and since there's no meta aspect being played in episode one, it feels so like if you really feel like you're alone because once you get episode two, you're not Battler as a piece, you're Battler on the board. So you sort of also undergo the same like emotional disconnect where okay it's like okay these people died whatever they're just pieces. So that early episode one horror and the music and just not knowing how anything worked, who Beatrice even was, what she acted like, it's wonderful and oh, these songs were so good at adding that atmosphere and mystique. Praise. Oh, okay. This one's just I don't have too much to say. It's just a nice like happy sort of piece. Represent Shannon and George most of the time. Just happy moments. Just a nice little piece. Path. It's this one. I think this is when George proposes. That's when I remember this song the most. Yeah, it is. I don't think I have too much to say here. It's just like a nice little swelling piece to accompany his proposal because it's the most like yeah, very pretty. It's the most I want to say like cause it's definitely focused on a lot of the times a lot of times down the line. But I feel like this is the time it has the most like bombastic affair to it because it's not weighed down by the circumstances that either Shannon or George is going through and it's mentioned. It's just sort of simple because again, it's the mystery's not revealing all its aspects yet, which is interesting. Such an interesting thing about Umineko as a whole. Like the mystery of Umi as a whole hasn't revealed itself in the mystery of episode one because it's just not necessary at that point. Anyways, Swallowtail Butterfly. This piece is such a great tone setter for. I think it's definitely most effective in episode one, and I think it only plays in question arcs. I don't remember if it plays. It definitely doesn't play in 7 or 8. Maybe in 5. I don't think in 6 either. But it's the build up to the bells finally ringing, changing the date to October 5th, and you kind of know what's gonna happen. It sort of becomes just like a normal occasion in episodes 2 through 4 because you already know murders are to happen. But the first time around, it's like you know something's coming, and you know it's not gonna be too good. And just the slow build up, flashing through all the characters, it's just so wonderfully done. Especially when it all when the piano comes in, and just a little bit. Or is the piano on the strings? Yeah. And it flashes to the painting. Really good. Okay. Time for a big one. I don't think I even need to say the name of this piece. And there's those bells again. So I'm gonna make another confession that I'm not. I should say on my first read through, I'm not the biggest fan of like the sort of like electronic tracks of Umi on my first read. I quite enjoyed them on my second time around. just because I sort of got it sort of fit the vibe for me more, and I stopped comparing them to other tracks of the similar vibes, and it's Golden Slaughter is such an excellent track, especially in its early moments of setting that tone that people have been murdered. Oh shit. Everything that's happened before this, all the music, all the events, everything that's happened before, it's just been thrown out the window. We need to get our shit together because there's a murderer out on the loose, and 6 people have just died. But this song is great. This song is great. It's for yeah. I wanted to go here. It's very frantic. It's very scared, and then the main sort of like chorus. Excuse me. Like it gets often compared to like rave music, but it's so good at elevating that as I mentioned earlier that frantic nature. It's just like like what do we do now? How do we get past this? People have died. But this is a very wonderful track. And I would always look forward to. It's funny. It's just like another sort of mention of how like we sort of embody meta battlers' reactions to some extent of like the murders, since we know in episode 1 we never had that like meta aspect, and it's just like, oh shit, they've died and they're dead. But when episode 2 comes around, they all come back. It's like, oh well, people have died, but now I get to hear Golden Slaughter, so that's awesome. But yeah, next is World End. Oh. So I don't know if this is meant to be piano. I don't know if it's either piano or music box, but it's perfect for the smaller, quieter moments. And I think in Death it's used quite a bit, and it's very fitting. It's just like, I guess, a random like sort of statement. If you want something emotionally like resonant, just make something like in a music box form, and it'll probably get some people. And there's a reason. It feels so soft. It feels like it's directly touching you, because there's nothing but that solo instrument, that solo sound. There's no harmony. It's all alone. And I think World End does a very beautiful job of that. And there are so many times I can think of this song being played in the whole story, but I guess the first time I can think of this playing in episode 1 is when Battler and George and Jessica see the bodies, and they're just unable to really comprehend and accept it. It feels so out of place to what they know, and it's like they've been driving in a motorcycle at like 120 miles per hour, and they just hit a wall, and the wall is their parents being dead. Well, okay, not for George. For George, it's his lover, which is arguably worse considering he proposed to her. But it's a very wonderful piece. Witch of the Painting. Yeah, this is another one very similar to Sukashiri, where it's like that premonition and introduction to something. And of course, here it's the Witch of the Painting. It's because after excuse me, after the murders have happened, it's immediately immediately everyone's thinking, is there someone else on the island? And of course, the first person that comes to mind is Beatrice, the witch, the Golden Witch, because at this point we don't have reds or anything confirming that there are indeed, like, there are no more than 18 people on the island. And this is just, again, presence. Presence is such a phenomenal thing about Umineko in the mansion, in Beatrice and Kinzo, and it's so good in episode 1 because of how Beatrice doesn't show up in physically or like in a magic sense. It's just Beautifully done, beautifully done. I hold episode one so dear to my heart because of that feeling of just straight murder mystery. Oh shit, we're kind of cooked. And that kind of plays into the murders as well, which I guess I'll talk about later. Where again, the murders are just simple locked rooms, which yeah, for the first, oh god, I'm getting flashbacks of talking for like nearly a month about just Umineko and theorizing while rereading. It was a long while, but like episode one is the most low key. It's just at first Twilight, locked room in the warehouse. Second Twilight, locked room, Eva Hideyoshi. Third Twilight's Canon somehow dies while going to the boiler room, and then after that is when the three die, Genji, Nanjo, and Kumasawa. If I recall correctly. Let me actually check. I believe it's Kumasawa. I have my friend who I theorized with made like a doc, and I'm gonna go check that. Perfect. Yeah, it was Genji, Kumasawa, and Nanjo, and then of course Natsuhi leaves. I'll talk about that all later in this ramble, but it's such a low key mystery, and before like it's the murders start getting gradually like more and more insane because it makes it easier for Beatrice to push it as magic. But in episode one, it feels so much like not even a parody, but like just like an embracement of murder mysteries and manor houses, which there are oh so many of. And I just, oh man, it's so good. Next up is Suspicion, which this one is a little more. It's not it's this is like I don't know if I would call this Suspicion because it's like on the precipice of suspicion. Like they haven't fully started to suspect one another because obviously that's what happened, especially with with the Ushiromiyas, because normally family wouldn't beat so easily, like suspecting of each other. But the fact that they've all been at each other's throats with money is what makes them so easily like capable of believing one of them did it or whatnot. So that so gradual like build up of suspicion is another great thing about episode one. And I think another thing to discuss about something special and unique about episode one is that it's the only one that fully is paced around what's happening on the island, what's happening in that episode. Because of course the other ones skip around because like you don't want to see the same thing happen over and over again. Like them arrive, Maria gets a letter from Beatrice, blah 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 blah. Like even they start making jokes about it in later episodes. Like, can we just get to the first Twilights already? Because at that point it becomes more of a game about like the murders rather than sort of the people. It starts becoming more about individual people and how their stories are told. But anyway, Suspicion, very good about building up that sort of that inherent desire to suspect people around you, even though realistically what they should do is believe each other and believe that they wouldn't, kill another. But ooh, Scar Sound. This song is so good at building that tension. That you hear that the drums and the bouncing, going through different headphones, and this is such a good tension builder. There's not much room to breathe. There's constantly. It's like laying on a bed of laying on a pin of needles, and then it's so good for the tension that that honestly is more prevalent when like people are talking amongst each other about like suspicions and whatnot than it is during actual murder scenes. Like I found those scenes way more frightening than any murder because it's so unsettling, especially with the contrast it has with earlier in the episode, which has the extended introduction of all the people, all the family, before they reveal their true colors, mainly the adults, in terms of the inheritance and the money. But this is a very, very good song at showing that. Core. Okay. So I'm pretty sure, I'm like 95% sure Battler's like point is like his finger point is 100% a reference to Phoenix Wright and his objection. And I'm pretty sure this is titled that because of Core from Ace Attorney as well. And the sound definitely fits that because it's sort of when the pieces start coming together. And it's a vibe. Umineko has some very good thinking tracks because that's the heart of its mystery, really. It's don't stop thinking. Always figure out a way to the answer of the mystery, or at least a answer to the mystery, because if, as Battler learns much later on, if anything was truly magic, then the game would be unfair. There has to be a way to explain it without it. And that sort of progression of Battler in this moment, and especially in episode 1, I feel like it's very funny to say, but Battler's probably smartest in episode 1 in terms of being a piece like on the board. He gets shit done. He figures things out very, very quickly. And it's this sort of like introduces us to the fact that he's protagonist for a reason. He's a big mystery guy, and he knows how this stuff works. He knows how people work, and it's a very nice reaffirming feeling to have this song play after so much like tension building and accusations thrown. Very, very good stuff. Minute Darkness. Okay, so it can't just be me, but this song sounds so much like Sabbath. I think it's the song from Sayano Uta, the title screen theme. At least like the beginning, of course, not the rest of the song, but this is so similar to Sabbath, which with the, I don't even know what to call the instrument. It's escaping me, but that sounds so similar. Anyways, very good way to illustrate just like it's sort of like when everybody's like quieted down after arguing, and just it really hits you with the fact that, you know, people have died, and you have to find a way through this. You can't just keep arguing, and that sort of like sets in after they've stopped talking. And it's so good, at setting that tone. Night Eyes. Okay. And this is where the complete opposite of Minute Darkness is, where everything goes, oh my god. Some of these thumbnails are like CGs from PS3 that I've never seen, and Ava has the nastiest grin on her face. Ugh. But this is like the complete opposite of Minute Darkness. It's just when shit hits the fan, nobody can stop arguing with each other. And I think I remember most with Ava and Natsuki, of course, where, because you're slowly shown that these two in particular, really do not like each other. They kind of stand in complete opposition in their beliefs and how they act. And this song is just, it's been all these previous like suspicious songs and like tension building songs have all been building to this moment, and it's so well done here. It's so very well done. Close My Heart. Okay. So I think the first time this plays is when Kanon discovers the bodies of Ava and Hideyoshi. Or Hideyoshi, I should say. And if this is being played, it's most likely something bad has already happened, and you're just kind of stuck thinking, well, oh shit, how long until I find what happened? but I love the staccato. Let's say violin, dun dun dun. Either violin or viola, I don't know, but it's slowly egging you on to find out what happened, what's gone on. Requiem is a this one's pretty akin to its name, Requiem. It's a mass for dead souls, and generally that's when this plays. And this should be when Jessica discovers Cannon's body, and it most certainly sounds like a Requiem. It's I'm gonna find the like the this. It reminds me of Adagio for Strings by Barber. Funnily enough, it's a lot more fast paced, but it's the solo strings, and it's all like groups. It's all group solos playing the same thing. It's not very complicated, but it's very full. It's very concrete. This is a requiem for the dead. There's no going back for anybody. They're just simply gone. And it's this scene in particular is it's such a contrast to the death of the first Twilight, because the first and second Twilight, I should say, because it's almost out of disbelief for the first Twilight. Like they just simply can't believe it. But the third Twilight with Canon for Jessica, it's to the point where she just knows it's real. She knows Canon's been murdered, and she's already resigned herself to the fact that he's dead, basically. Even though the scene does play out, and like Nanjo rushes him to like not the hospital, excuse me, like to a medical room. I think in the servants' room, but the song is very clearly saying like he's pretty much dead, and it's a very lovely way of illustrating that. And I love the contrast between the third Twilight and the first Twilight, and the third Twilight and the first and second Twilight, I should say. I guess I forgot to mention this too, but the way like the murders happen, like in the first Twilight and second Twilight, they're both in locked rooms. This is just as if they just missed the murderer, as if they just escaped it moments after killing Cannon. And it shows how much the murderer is toying with them, and it's such a fearsome aspect about episode 1 with how Beatrice he's at the pinnacle of an elusive figure in this episode. It's just so very wonderfully illustrated throughout all the Twilights. Mind. Oh, this one is another thinker piece. Oh, it's so good. I don't really have much other to say than it's a thinker piece. It's when they realize, I suppose I should say, when everyone realizes that they have to start figuring out a way to like stop these murders from happening. They can't just simply resign themselves to being murdered, picked off one by one. Mind is very good at sort of introducing that frantic thought in their mind as well as the readers. It's so good. It's so good. World End. So we have the non-piano rendition, and it's, if I remember correctly, this is after the argument between Nanjo Genji Kumasawa and Natsuhi over the letter, and I think this is one of the few times that, maybe even the only time, where the characters express remorse over like casting out people and realizing maybe that isn't the best thing they should do, and that they shouldn't suspect everyone, which is a very interesting thing. I feel like in the later episodes, everybody's immediately like, "Oh, alright, fuck those guys," but with Genji, Kumasawa, and Nanjo, they've just always been around by their sides, and it's a very reflecting thing. World End is a very good piece for that as well, with the sort of like synth vocals in the background and the piano sounding kind of little electronic. It's a very it's a very nice scene. I like the empathy that comes from the cousins. The cousins. Man. Man, oh man. Okay. Play? I don't remember exactly where this plays, but this is another, like, yeah, it's another tension building song. That these I think are definitely the underrated. Like all these atmospheric tracks are the most underrated aspect about Umi, because without it, I don't think the setting and atmosphere would be nearly as effective. Not nearly as effective. Yeah. Next is System Zero. Yeah, this is nearing the okay. What a great piece to set up the conclusion of episode one's based episode. This realization of Natsuki that there's nothing else to do but fight in her eyes, and it's just often we don't really see that much in the later episodes, because most of the times they just hold themselves up. I guess Rosa in episode 2 does a similar thing, but never in the match. Never a direct. Actually, no. Never a direct confrontation, because that's what Natsuki's doing. She's directly confronting Beatrice, and this is a very good song to represent that sort of like that fear, but also like courage to stand up to this invisible killer almost. But all that entire, I'll do an overview of all the events afterwards and just discussing the nice and cool things about it. But very cool song. Voiceless. This plays a lot earlier in later episodes. That's a really weird way of putting it. This plays in later episodes, but it's usually a lot earlier on. But it's such a good way to describe the emptiness in everyone's hearts, realizing that just people are gone and they're never going to hear them again. They're never going to see them again. And emptiness is another, I think, big thing to Umi. Just feeling like you're missing something, like something that you once had isn't there anymore, and you're not complete without some sort of thing. Like Battler, I'll get back to Battler another time, but George I think is the easiest. Without Shannon, he feels like he's lost a part of himself. Jessica, I feel like with her is not as much with canon as it is with George and Shannon, but also with her, like, her desire to be outspoken, to play in a band, to be more herself, and how she's almost like losing a part of herself just by completely ignoring that. But I really like this solo piano piece. It's very good at illustrating that feeling of just, what are we to do now? Is there really much we can do? Next is Dead Angle. This is one of my I've listened to this song so many times. It's one of my favorite pieces. But I remember this one from the very first time it plays when Natsuki confronts Beatrice. I guess I should put a quotation marks. We don't really see, but it's just the atmosphere this track brings, with the droning sound in the background, and then the bum 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 bum. And the bells come back. It really sells the fact that it's like you almost can't comprehend what's happening here, which is a lot of the times what the witch is going for. And it's just beautifully used. This is such a good piece. Oh, I just, it's so much harder for me to talk about the pieces I really, really like, because it's just like, oh man, it's so good. Oh man, it's so awesome. Oh man. But it's just too good. I'm not going to say anything without fumbling over my words, but Anyways. I think, yeah, this should be the credits theme. I think it's a wonderful introduction to how the games are going to be played from now on. I think this is the one time maybe the second episode also has a full credits, because they start to get vague with like the Twilights, who died on what, in later episodes, because it makes it more vague, makes it harder for us to parse information. And actually, it just clicked with me now. It's because the first two are the bottles, of course, yeah. Ryukishi, you smart bastard, and then of course 3 through 6 is written by Featherin. But, very good way of illustrating that almost bombastic nature of this game coming to an end. And you just kind of sit there and think like, everyone's gone now, and I don't know what can happen from here. And it's just wonderful ending. And the way it ends, the same way as Higurashi. We're about to get into the main part of why like playing Higurashi before this adds so much impact to the littlest things. Where the end of the credits, from what I remember, is like, please uncover the truth. And it's like, it's the same thing Keiichi said at the end of episode 1 in Higurashi. It's like, it's so powerful. But wonderful song. Wonderful way to end episode 1. I don't think I really have to talk about the next two, because these are just like classical pieces. This one is phenomenal at illustrating, like, just, I really like how this one sells the fact that the tea party is okay. It's just like an all like a cast review from Higurashi. It's just gonna be all the characters talking. That's chill. It's everyone who made it to the Golden Land, and they wish for people to come back. Like, this is awesome. Everybody's gonna talk about the mysteries in like a joking manner, and then they'll all agree like, see you in the next episode. Yay! Really good way of sort of selling the prank, the joke that this isn't like that. The tea parties are in fact like a main crucial point of the story. Like, standing outside of the mystery, the game boards is a crucial like setting of Umineko. And when Beatrice first shows, I guess I'll go into it now, but when Beatrice first shows up in this scene, it's like wait, hold on, you're not supposed to be real. You're just like a painting. You're just like a figment of everyone's imagination. And she just shows up and completely, and then she starts killing everyone. It's such a, like, you think, reading Higurashi first, you go into it, you're thinking like, oh man, it's awesome. I get to see everybody joke around with each other. They're free from the grimy horror mystery nature of the normal story. But no, Beatrice comes in and fucking murks them, and it's so well done. It's such a phenomenal twist. I think Oregon Short 600. Yeah, da-da-da. Very good. It's just a good song for the witches tea party. And with the organ, the organ playing the song, it feels like I'm being like made fun of. It's very, very nice song. Very nice song for the witches. And then Prison Ship is our final one. I think this is exactly when Beatrice starts killing everyone else. But very good way at ending the episode, making you realize that this is going to be a very different story from what you're expecting. It's not going to be like Higurashi, where everything is played mainly inside the game board. There's something much bigger going on here, and Beatrice is at the root of it all. And then it cuts to black, and you see the credits playing with this in the background. It's hard to forget. It's hard to forget this ending. Really, really, really well done. And I think I'm surprised to say that I think that's all of episode 1, and I think that has the most soundtrack. or the most tracks in any episode because it's introducing all the ones that are repeated all the time in later episodes. But I guess I guess the last part I'll talk about is the mystery side of things, and it. I remember because I mentioned earlier this was on a reread. I started theorizing more so on a reread of Umi with a friend, and he had also finished only QA. And we were basically like reviewing and like making theories while rereading the episodes with like full context of the question arcs. And episode one always, to me personally, it always felt like it should be the easiest because there's no magic. Nothing is trying to be shown to us that isn't what happened. It's just, it feels like someone's playing a trick on us. And it was so fun solving in our own way how these mysteries were done because one thing I'll always say that I think it's been really odd for me to see people say, "Oh, these Umi isn't really solvable. It's not meant to be solved. It should just be. You should just ignore it. You should just take the story as is." But I feel like that's such a way of just sort of disregarding how well set up the mystery of Umineko is. Of course, I do think it's very, I don't think it's possible to solve any of the mysteries in QA without at least having read through it once. I think there are some aspects, like the rules of the game, mentioned in Birkenstein's letter, that are really, like, the key to figuring out what's going on, how Umi is presented to us as a reader, that you need to uncover the mysteries of episodes 1 through 4. And I think, but even before that, because it's just so wonderfully placed. Like, if you just the problem Battler has in episode 1 is that he can't get over anybody killing anyone, and that's why it's so hard for us to throw any accusations. But the moment you start suspecting people is the moment the illusion almost just breaks. Like Maria in the letter, we don't know if Beatrice actually saw her and gave her the letter, or if she's just lying. But if we just assume accomplice Maria, there's no magic. She's saying that she got the letter from Beatrice. Boom, broken. Or with Cannon fighting the bodies, that doesn't mean anything if he's the one who murdered them and locked it, and now he's just looking for a key, even though he probably already has one. It's stuff like that where I realized, going through it with a friend, it's just like presentation matters so much for selling a mystery, and the way Rule Y works to its advantage, like Umi's advantage, is wonderful. I'll put it on the screen if I don't remember it fully, but it's like all lies agreed upon by all parties are depicted as reality, and that's the source of Beato's magic. And then the other half is like someone sees a golden butterfly, in 30 minutes they'll either die or they're on the culprit side. That last one is a little bit less important. That's more like very, very specific things, that very specific rule that Ryukishi's probably using for his writing more than, well, we did find some culprits and whatnot, or accomplices I should say, from the golden butterfly rule, but mainly that the all lies agreed upon by all parties are depicted as reality is just such a smart way of doing a mystery. Like, it's presentation is everything. It's everything. Like I think the second Twilight is the best illustration of that. It doesn't have to be that Kanon and Genji find this door locked, because only Kanon sees the lock ever. He's the one that interacts with it. So he's the only one making this a locked room. So all he has to do is just lie about it being locked. He could just, I think he can just cut it and then just lie about it to Kumasawa, and then he masks that by just he has to cut it at some point, so to get into the room. So it's just like, it's just all about the presentation. And it's like with the markings, like it's so funny in hindsight realizing with Rule Y, because it's just everything is depicted to us based on lies. Canon's like, how did this marking get here? It's been only 5 minutes. And then you realize it's just like, the motherfucker probably did it like 2 minutes ago. He's a lying bastard. But it's such a good way of making a simple mystery so complicated by just not telling you the truth, but in a way that isn't completely unfair so long as you pay attention to how the rules work, because this is a game. Like, the solving exactly how the mysteries would work isn't necessarily the game between Battler and Beato. Battler's just trying to deny witches, deny magic, but it feels like the role of figuring out how exactly these murders could have been committed is up to it's between the reader and Ryukishi, because like there are multiple ways to solve some murders even now. Like I remember my when rereading with my friend, the first thought for solving the mystery of the second Twilight was just canon without the window. There was no red saying the windows had never been opened or closed. So he just opens the window to leave after murdering Eva and Hideyoshi. He could have just knocked, told them dinner was ready, stabbed him, set up the murder, and then went out the window, cut the chain, and then since he's the first one in the room, close the window, lock it, boom, murder. And I think that's another thing I love so much about Umi is that and at least I don't know I know the manga gives like official solutions, but the fact that the VIA never does with the scene in episode 7 makes it so that solution's completely valid. He could have done that. That is a way for canon and to some extent Genji, even though we know he doesn't kill, to be an accomplice and a murderer for the second Twilight, which would of course make it so they're suspicious for all the other like murders, and even cast suspicion on his death. So there's such a there's a thread to follow in every episode, and there is a way to pick up on it, but you have to really give your time to this story. Like I think I have 170 and 180 hours in Umi maybe, and I probably have like, and I'm a fast reader. I read VNs very quickly, and especially since I don't have voice acting. I didn't read with voice acting. It goes by much quicker for me. And there's probably, I want to say like, I don't want to overestimate, but somewhere in the ballpark of like 50 to 100 hours of just theorizing without the game open, and just music. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to like inflate my hours, but it was certainly a lot of times I would spend many nights just talking with my friend, figuring out just do avenues to explore, figuring out new ways for the mystery to be solved, to weave a path through the reds. But I think that's for the most part all I have to say for episode 1. Really, there's not too much to talk about character wise, because this is just merely an introduction to them and how they act and who they are, what they desire, and all sorts of stuff like that. But yeah, I think I'll end that for this episode. The second one is going to be a much bigger discussion, because that's when Ryukishi gets into the heart of this story, and when things start getting more into the personal connection between the people on this island. And then of course also the mystery aspect. The red gets introduced, the actual game gets introduced by Beato, and Battler and Beato start playing, start dueling with their words, denying magic, playing the game. But yeah, I guess I'll probably follow the same format of just talking alongside the tracks. I think that's a very good way of just speaking, or speaking as in eliciting emotion from the music, and just having it sort of bring forth thoughts and feelings I've had about the story. Because I feel like if I were just to sit down and write and like examine every scene again and sort of analyze everything, I think it wouldn't do things justice. I feel like completely analyzing things would almost get rid of the magic. I feel like I want to treat these as sort of real people and not scrutinize every single aspect of them. I don't know. That's just how I see things. But yeah, this was way easier to get out than than just merely typing it out. I think it was like at 6 pages, and it was just getting nowhere. So I guess I just rambling is the way I'm gonna talk about Umineko, and for the most part, actually no, all of it was unscripted besides the first portion, which was vaguely like as I had written things out, but even then I just spoke them as I wanted to, and I just kind of used like, oh, I want to talk about Higurashi here first, and then presence, and then all that. But anywho, uh, I'll probably yap about episode 2 sometime soon in the future. So yeah.